Well, hey everybody, how you doing today? It's another day and it's another story that I'm going to share with you right here on our coffee break. So welcome to the channel. I got a great story for you today that I'd like to start off with sharing some things I've seen and remembered while I've been thinking about my personal story. And it isn't that much of a personal story, really. It's just a personal experience that I've had that has had some bearing on how I look at things in relation to our topic of the day, which is snakes. I don't know how many of you out there like snakes or have a pet snake. I don't understand how people can really want a snake as a pet, because I've heard some stories about snakes that have attacked their owners. There was a story from New York where a gentleman had a pet snake for many, many years, and it got pretty big, and it was a python, I think, it was a boa constrictor. And it got so big and he lived in such a tiny place that eventually that snake strangulated him and killed him. And I've also heard of anacondas just, eating whole people alive if they were there and not able to defend themselves in any way, which is very easy to happen with an anaconda from what I understand. But I've seen snake owners out on the streets, like with these big pythons, these yellow ones in particular, wrapped around their shoulders, and they are just out there letting people come along and look at them and pet them or take pictures with them. And I steer clear of them because of my personal experience with snakes. And no, I didn't get bit by one, and I don't ever want to, knock on wood, but I did have an experience, and that's what I want to get to here in a minute, is how I feel, or why I feel the way I do about snakes. So, in fact, recently I was in a store. I don't even remember which store it was at this point in time, but I saw a man walk in behind me, and I believe it was at a department store, and he had one of those little yellow pythons, like a baby one, on his shoulders. And at first I thought, oh, that's just a rubber snake. That's a fake one. He's just trying to freak people out and have shock value in the moment. But later, as I was from a distance from him, I saw that snake moving his head all around. And then I realized, no, that's a real snake. So I steered clear of him too. In any case, those are some stories that I remember about snakes, and another one was in a documentary. And you may have seen this, and I'd certainly be interested to know if you remember this incident where one man built a suit that was supposed to be strong enough to withstand the pressure of a snake, squeezing the life out of its prey. And he was going to allow himself to get in this suit and to set himself out as bait so that a snake could eat him. And not just any snake, this was the anaconda. I remember watching this documentary and I was riveted, because I wanted to see if he was really going to follow through with it, How was he going to do this? Why did he want to do this? I don't know. But he did get out there with this suit and a big helmet and all kinds of gear on. And he laid himself out there, and that snake did come along. And he allowed that snake to envelop him, to basically start swallowing him whole, at least halfway, like his entire torso. And I don't remember what happened or why it happened the way it did, but they didn't follow through with the entire event. They only went that far, but they intended to go all the way to see what it would be like to be inside the belly of a snake. But he went that far, and I remember thinking, why? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to put your life in danger on purpose that way with a very dangerous animal? And so they ended up documenting this and putting it in a documentary. And they managed at some point to stop the incident from happening and get him out of the snake's mouth and set the snake on free, I think. But I just thought that was crazy. What do you think about that? Would you ever allow that to happen to you on purpose? Not me. We have a big snake problem in this country right now in Florida. I'm sure you've heard the news and have seen it in the papers and what have you, but we've had the Burmese python just sort of taking over the whole Florida state of Florida. And they're eating up the ecosystem and all the wildlife down there. They've had a big impact on that ecosystem. And they're trying now to stop that from happening, stop those snakes from overpopulating the area and just taking over. Because they're moving further north as a result of, eating their way through the Everglades. And that's a lot, okay? And now they have a whole department and people out there who are like snake hunters that are literally going out there and finding these 18 to 25 foot Burmese pythons and capturing them and then having to get rid of them and figuring and tagging them with little GPS units to find where the male will meet with the females and stop them from laying more eggs. Just crazy stuff like that. We have to have control over our where our communities are in relation to these snakes, because they will come along into the community and they'll make home in your home and eat your dogs and threaten the lives of your children and all that kind of stuff, as well as the wildlife. I share all these stories about snakes with you just to get to my personal story about snakes. These things are out there, they're actually happening and have happened, and I find them very interesting and to some extent just a little crazy, the lengths that people will go to have snakes or to deal with them. So with that in mind, here's my story. I remember when I was in the second or third grade and I was living in San Antonio, Texas, my parents took me to the San Antonio Zoo. And I would ride the elephants and do the outdoor exhibits, and then eventually we went into the reptile building, which is just a square building. And the outer perimeter of that building was filled with aquariums with small reptiles of all sorts. And in the middle was a giant terrarium where they held bigger reptiles. I didn't know that at first. I just went in and was looking through and going around the outer perimeter, looking inside each of the aquariums to see what was in there. And by the time I'd gotten all the way around the reptile building, I was back up toward the entrance, which would then become the exit for me. And I had my back up against the large aquarium, terrarium in the middle of the room. And I was a small kid. I'm a small person. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But when I turned around and looked inside that big terrarium, aquarium, whatever you want to call it, there was a 20-foot boa constrictor with its mouth wide open at my face, at my head. And it was big enough it could have swallowed me whole. And do you know what I did? I screamed bloody murder. I don't know who wouldn't when you got a snake staring at you in the face. I mean, you were that close to it. And nothing but a barrier between you and that snake. I was scared to death. So I screamed bloody murder, and that began my trek in life to say that I'm not interested in snakes. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Thank you very much. So that was my big snake story. And I've had a couple of experiences along the way where I've also run into snakes, or they ran into me, or was kind of nearby. One was in Tennessee when I was doing a job and I was staying at a hotel. I took the day off, the afternoon off, and I went out into a forested area back behind the hotel. And I just sat on a log and was just sitting there listening and meditating and writing in my journal. And I don't know when I noticed it, but at some point I heard something, and I turned and I looked and I saw the back end of a very large snake had already passed by me, thank you very much, and was on its way away from me. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, this snake, it could have attacked me for all I knew. I guess I was too still and it didn't notice I was there or didn't perceive me as a threat, but it just passed right on by, and I'm like, I'm out of here. Shot out of there real fast as soon as I could. And those were two snake stories that really I remember very clearly. I also remember one where a snake, a black snake in Missouri, had entered the cabin that I was staying in with my parents through the closet of the bedroom I was in, and I could see it crawling or falling over a hook in the closet that had belts on it, and it was sliding down and was falling to the floor. And I shot out of that room too. And now I live in the Great Southwest, where rattlesnakes are very popular here. And knock on wood, I haven't really run into any or come up upon any except one time on a roadway out in the national park. And it was crossing the road. And as soon as I got up to it, it kind of squished itself up real tiny, and I kind of rode over it. Not over it literally, but over it where I passed over it. And then as soon as I got past it, it straightened out again and went on its way. But I stopped long enough to get a picture but not get out of the car. And that was the only time. Either story that I tell you, or any of these stories that I'm telling you that happened to me personally, are only just to tell you that I have this thing about snakes. And it all started with San Antonio Zoo, that big 20-foot boa constrictor. Don't like snakes at all. Don't understand why people are actually having them as pets, but I know that there's plenty of people out there that do have them as pets, and some of them are very small snakes and they never get too much bigger, and they don't bite and they're not poisonous and what have you, but I don't like them. Do you like them? I'd like to know your experiences and whether or not you have a pet snake or not, and all those kinds of stories that you have in relation to snakes. And that's my story for the day. Hey, if you liked my story, give me a big thumbs up. Tell me you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button, and I'll let you know when I have some more stories to share with you. And share the video through social media or email blast or whatever you want to do to get the word out that we're having this moment together to just sort of talk out loud and think out loud and have a conversation about something for the day. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to the next time that we meet up again. So until then, have a great day. Bye-bye now.